Reading of the life and martyrdom of the holy great martyr Manas, Holy Mass to us. Amen. Christ's holy martyr Manas was born in Paphlagonia of Asia Minor in the 3rd century. His parents, Theodotus and Rufina, were renowned, of the patrician family, both wealthy and esteemed by all, and radiant with Christian piety. Unable to hide for long their faith in Christ and fervent love for him, they confessed their piety before all, and turned many unto Christ. For this reason, then, Alexander, the magistrate of the city of Gangra, informed against them, as he had received command from the emperor, to spread and confirm by all possible means the worship of the pagan gods, and torture and put to death all Christians who did not obey this imperial decree. Alexander called Theodotus to judgment, and began to compel him to make sacrifice to the idols. But the Blessed One did not wish even to hear what the ruler said. Although Alexander desired to give over Theodotus the torments immediately, yet he was constrained by the fact of Theodotus' noble birth. He did not have the right to dishonor and torture descendants of patrician families without special permission from the emperor. Therefore Alexander sent Theodotus to Caesarea of Cappadocia for the governor Faustus. Now this Faustus was extremely hardened in his impiety, and as soon as Theodotus came, he shut him in prison. The wife of Theodotus, the blessed Rufina, also followed her husband. Although she was with child at the time, she went into the prison together with him, and there endured suffering for Christ. Now Theodotus knew the weakness of his flesh, and perceived the terrible cruelty of his tormentor. But nonetheless he preferred to die than to offend in some way against piety. Yet fearing that he would not possess the strength to endure the severe tortures awaiting him, he turned to God with fervent prayer, saying, O Lord God of hosts, Father of thy beloved Son, I thank and glorify thee, that thou hast deemed me worthy to be cast into this prison for thy name's sake. But I entreat thee, O Lord, as thou knowest my weakness, receive therefore my soul in this prison, that mine enemy might not boast against me. And God, who alone hath fashioned our hearts and understandeth all our works, heard his faithful servant, and quickly sent unto him a blessed repose. Leading his soul out of the prison of the body, he made her to abide in his radiant heavenly mansions. But Theodotus' wife, blessed Rufina, enduring deprivation and suffering in the prison, and, seized with great sorrow over the death of her husband, gave birth to a son before her time. Beholding her newly born son, in the body of her husband lying lifeless with no breath, she prayed with compunction and tears to God thus, O God of this great man, and from his greatness fashioned woman, command that I also journey the same path which my husband hath gone, and having freed me from his brief life, receiving his divine eternal habitations, of his infant to which I have given birth, and thou thyself rear as thou knowest, and be to him father, mother, and guardian of his life. Calling thus upon the Lord, the time of her affliction, this venerable and holy woman was heard, freed from the bonds of the body, and given up her soul into the hands of the Lord. She departed unto eternal freedom. The child, however, the great Manas, remained alive between the bodies of his parents. Then God, who foreknoweth all things, sent in a dream an angel in the form of a young man to a certain most illustrious and pious woman named Amir, who was also called Matrona, in order for her to seek out the relics of the saints, bury them with due honor, and take the child and rear him as her own son. She hastened to the governor to carry out the Lord's command, and requested the bodies from him. God inclined the cruel heart of the ruler to mercy. They did not hinder the renowned woman's desire. Entering the prison, she found the relics of both the saints lying side by side, and between them a beautiful and joyful infant. She took the relics and buried them in her garden, in a resplendent and honorable manner. And the child she took to herself. Amir was a childless widow who lived in chastity. She loved the infant as though he were her own son, and raised him a Christian. The child grew, but until his 5th year he never spoke a word. The first time he spoke was to Amir, who was a second mother to him, and he said Mama, whence he was given the name Manas. Amir sent him to school to receive an education, and soon did he so greatly surpass all those of his own age, that all wondered at his brilliance. At that time, the Roman emperor was the impious Aurelius. He compelled all to worship the idols, not only adult men and women, but even small children. Indeed, he paid special attention to children, imagining that because of their simplicity, they could easily be deceived and dissuaded from piety. What is more, this impious one thought that if children became accustomed to eat meat offered to idols from their earliest youth, they would later become the more zealous idolaters in their adult years. Hence, by diverse enticements, he would lead them to his own impiety. Many children and even young men succumbed to this deception and submitted to the will of the emperor. However, those who were fellow students of the Blessed Mamas imitated him and followed his instructions and did not obey the imperial decrees. He demonstrated to his schoolfellows the deception of the pagan gods, which have neither life nor power, and he instructed them in the knowledge of the one true God, whom he himself worshipped, and whom he offered spiritual sacrifices, that is, a contrite spirit and a humble heart. Thus, from his earliest years, Mamas had the gray hair and wisdom and maturity of old age and undefiled life. At that time, the emperor sent a new governor named Democritus to Caesarea to replace Faustus. He was a great zealot for his impious and godless religion, and breathed persecution and murder upon the Christians. The Blessed Mamas was denounced to him as not only not worshipping the gods himself, but also corrupting the youths with whom he studied and teaching them the Christian faith. Mamas was at that time 15 years old, and he was also an orphan once again, since his second mother, Amir, had reposed in the Lord, having left great possessions unto her adopted son and only heir. She had departed unto the heavenly riches, which God has prepared for them that love him. When Democritus heard of the renowned Mamas, he sent for him. And as soon as he arrived, he straightway inquired by the human Christian, and if he not only did not worship the gods, but also dared to corrupt his schoolmates and companions by teaching them not to submit to the imperial decree. The young Mamas fearlessly replied, like an adult and full-grown man, I am precisely that one who considers thy wisdom to be nothing. Thou hast turned aside from the right path, and hast stumbled about in such darkness, thou canst not even gaze upon the light of truth. Thou hast departed from the true God, and drawn nigh to demons, and now thou hast worshipped lifeless and deaf idols. I shall never renounce my Christ, and I endeavor to turn unto him all whenever I can. Astounded by such a bold reply from the Blessed Mamas, Democritus became enraged, and perceiving that he could not persuade him by meekness, commanded that he immediately be led away to the altar of their god Serapis, and there offer sacrifice, even if it were against his will. But Mamas did not in the least fear the threat of the governor, but replied to him calmly, Thou hast not the authority to punish me or to make these threats, for I am the son of parents of a renowned senatorial family. Then Democritus inquired of those present concerning Mamas' lineage, and having learned that he was a descendant of ancient Roman nobility, and that Amir, the most illustrious and wealthy woman, had reared him and had made him the heir of her vast possessions, he decided not to give him over to tortures, seeing that he did not have the right to do such a thing. Rather, he bound him with iron fetters and sent him to the Emperor Aurelius, who at that time was in the city of Ega, and wrote to the Emperor concerning his actions. When the emperor received and read the letter of Democritus, he ordered that the youth be brought before him. He employed much cunning, at times threatening him, and at times promising him great honor and precious gifts, saying, O splendid youth, if thou wilt draw nigh and make sacrifice to the great god Serapis, thou shalt live with us in the palace, and be treated in a royal manner. All will revere and praise thee. Truly, thou shalt be most fortunate. However, if thou dost not obey me, thou shalt bitterly perish. But the courageous Mamas replied, Let it not be that I should worship the lifeless idols, and thou dost venerate as gods. How foolish thou art to worship wood and stone, which have no feeling, instead of the living God. Cease to tempt me with cunning words, for when thou thinkest that thou doest me an act of kindness, in reality thou tormentest me. When thou tormentest me, thou becomest my benefactor. Be it known to thee, therefore, that all the favors, gifts, and honors which thou dost promise unto me will become torture for me, if I should love them instead of Christ. For those harsh torments which thou threatenest me with for the sake of the name of Christ, they shall be for me a great benefaction. Since death for my Christ is dearer to me than all honors and possessions. At this, the enraged ruler commanded that the youth be beaten with rods. Although the delicate and tender body of the most wise Mamas was torn by the blows, yet he endured all without uttering a word, as though someone else were being tortured. The emperor tried to soften and change the mind of the youth, even at the time of his beatings, by saying to him, "Just say that thou wilt make sacrifice to the gods, and I shall immediately free thee from these torments." But the martyr answered, "Neither with my heart and with my lips will I renounce my God and King Jesus Christ, although thou shouldst give thee 10,000 times more wounds. These wounds unite me with my beloved Lord, and I wish that the arms of my tormentors would never grow tired. The more they beat me, so much the more that they store up riches for me with Christ, the center of the contest." But Aurelius perceived that the great Mamas was not at all frightened by these tortures. He ordered that he be stripped and his body gradually burned with torches, in order that from the slowness he be made to feel the most harsh and bitter pain. Thus also was the severe torment applied to the indomitable youth. The lighted torches were brought near unto his martyric body. Yet the fire reverenced the athlete of Christ and did not touch him, but rather turned back into the faces of his tormentors. When the tyrant beheld this, and the unshakenness of the martyr, it was rather he that was kindled and consumed with wrath. For the less attention the blessed Mamas paid to the fire, the more the emperor burned with rage. He then ordered that the saint be stoned. But this suffering was so pleasant for the martyr, who was sheltered with the love of Christ, that it seemed as though sweet-smelling flowers had been strewn upon him. Seeing that nothing could persuade the saint that he remained invincible to all the tortures, the emperor finally gave command that he be put to death by casting him into the sea. The servants of the emperor fastened lead weights about the martyr's neck and led him to the sea. But neither at this moment did the Lord, who hath commanded his angels to keep us, abandon his servant. Suddenly there appeared upon the way an angel whose countenance was like lightning, and with a human voice he threatened the soldiers, who became terrified and fled. The angel then took the weight from around the neck of the glorious martyr of Christ, and led to the top of a high mountain, the wilderness not far from Caesarea, and ordered Mamas to remain there. St. Mamas began his life in the wilderness with a fast. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights upon the mountain, and was manifested as a second Moses. In a marvelous vision, Christ our Savior bestowed upon him the shepherd's crook and the Holy Gospels. Then he built himself a small chapel in which to pray and read the Holy Gospel. At the divine command, the godly Mamas gathered about himself wild beasts from the wilderness in which he abode, as a shepherd of sheep. They listened to him and obeyed him as though endowed with reason. He nourished himself on the milk of his animal companions, and also prepared cheese, not only for his own need, but for the poor as well. Soon the report of the Blessed One spread throughout all of Caesarea. At that time, another governor named Alexander, different from the previous one, ruled in Cappadocia. He, like his predecessors, was exceedingly cruel and impious. When he heard of the divine Mamas, he thought he must be a sorcerer, and sent soldiers on horseback into the wilderness to seek him out and bring him before his presence. Now Mamas foreknew by divine grace dwelling within him of the coming of these men, and therefore he descended a little way from the mountain and met them, and asked them whom they sought. Supposing him to be a shepherd who was tending sheep on the mountain, they replied, "We seek Mamas, who lives somewhere in this wilderness. Knowest thou him and where he might be?" "Why seek ye him?" answered Mamas. "It has been reported to the governor that he is a sorcerer," they said, "and therefore he has sent us to seize him and bring him for trial and torture." Then the Blessed One said to them, "I shall point him out to you, my friends, but first come to my dwelling to rest from your labor, and refresh yourselves with some food." The soldiers entered into his hut, and he offered them cheese, while they began to eat with great appetite. The doe and wild she-goats gathered that the ascetic might milk them. Mamas offered the fresh milk to the soldiers to drink, but he himself stood apart in prayer. At this many more wild animals began to gather, and the soldiers became terror-stricken, cast aside their food, and hastened to the Blessed One. He calmed them, and wishing to free them from their concern for finding him, declared unto them, "I am Mamas, whom you seek." Hearing this, they replied, "If thou dost wish to come to the governor, then accompany us. But if thou dost not wish, then permit us to depart without thee. We dare not take thee against thy will, but we entreat thee that these beasts do us no harm." Mamas reassured the soldiers and told them to go on ahead, saying that he would soon follow them into Caesarea. Thus the servants of the emperor departed immediately from the presence of the servant of God, and awaited his arrival at the gates of the city. And they wholly believed the words of such a marvelous man, and did not think ill of him. Thomas took a lion with him, and followed the soldiers into the city. When he drew nigh to the city gates, he had the lion wait outside the walls, and he himself passed through the gates. Soldiers met and guided him to Alexander. But when he saw the saint, said, Walk thou the notorious Mamas the sorcerer, of whom I have heard so much? Mamas answered, saying, I am the servant of Jesus Christ, who saveth those who believe on him and do his holy will, but who delivereth sorcerers, magicians, and those that worship idols unto eternal fire. But tell me, why dost thou send for me? He then answered, Because I cannot understand by what sorcery and magic thou hast so tamed wild and ferocious beasts, thou livest amongst them, and as I have heard, commandest them as though they were reasonable beings. The martyr responded to this, Whoever serves the one true and eternal God can never consent to live together with idol worshippers and workers of evil, for he disdains both magic and idolatry. Therefore I have chosen rather to live with wild beasts in the wilderness than with thee in the habitations of sinners. Animals are tamed, and obey me not with sorcery, as thou thinkest, for I do not even know of what sorcery is composed. For though they have not the gift of reason, yet they fear God and reverence his servants. But this is a thing worthy of wonder, that thou hast before thee such an example, still dost not wish to know the truth, showing thyself to possess less reason than they. Thou dost not worship the true God, and thou dishonorest his servants, torturing and murdering them mercilessly. The governor, inasmuch as he could not make answer to this, began to constrain the martyr even more, saying, Why hast thou become so impudent and foolish? That thou resistest the commands of the emperor, and shamelessly revilest us. Yet torments and punishments shall teach thee what is more fitting. And he ordered that the vessel be taken out immediately, hung up, beaten, and raped with iron claws. Christ's glorious martyr, although he was grievously wounded, endured these things with such courage, it seemed as though he felt no pain whatsoever, the need to be groan or cry out, but only raised his eyes unto the heavens, from whence he awaited succor. Seeing his perseverance, the godless Alexander commanded that he be raped with yet greater cruelty. At this a divine voice was suddenly heard from heaven, saying, Mamas, be strengthened and take courage. Many of the Christians who were standing in that place, beholding the carcass of the martyr, also heard this voice, and were greatly strengthened in their faith. The holy Mamas, being perfectly fortified by this voice, paid no attention at all to the thorns, although they continued to rake his body for a long time. Finally Alexander, suffering frenzy and rage, and being more tormented in his heart than Mamas in his body, gave command to heat a furnace in which to cast the martyr, and take him out meanwhile and hold him in prison till all shall be ready. In the prison were 40 other Christians, and as they had become weakened from hunger and thirst, St. Mamas prayed. And behold, suddenly a dove flew through the window into the dungeon, carrying in its beak food, which was like unto a pearl in color, and sweeter than honey. Having placed the food before the saint, the dove flew away out of the window. This substance was multiplied. Once also in the wilderness, a few loaves of bread were sufficient to feed thousands. When the prisoners had partaken of this food, they were fortified and refreshed. Moreover, through the prayers of the divine Mamas, at midnight the doors of the prison were opened, and all the captives, save Mamas, freely departed. After these things, the governor called Mamas to the tribunal, and said to him, Because of our care for other matters, we have given thee leisure, that thou mightest consider what is to thine advantage. But if thou dost not yet come to thy senses, behold the furnace, into which thou shalt be thrown. At this the brave Mamas replied, O governor, I have already made known to thee my resolve. Why then dost thou senselessly trouble thyself? Come therefore, make an end, and tarry not to execute those things which thou hast threatened. Hearing this, the governor cast him straightway into the furnace. The all good God, however, even as he once could do the furnace for the 3 children, here also annihilated the power of the fire. The martyr stood in the flames as though he were in a garden of abundant flowers washed with dew. For the whole period of time that he remained in the furnace, he changed and glorified God. After 3 days, when the fire was extinguished, the coals had become ashes, the governor ordered the executioners to bring out of the furnace whatever might remain of the martyr's body. As they approached the furnace, they heard the divine Mamas glorifying God with a loud voice. They immediately ran back in terror to make known unto the governor this supernatural wonder. Being darkened in mind, he said, "By the great gods Serapis and all the gods, this is clearly sorcery. So foolish was this imperceptive one." When such were receptive to the light and the truth saw the athlete of Christ well and unharmed, they gave glory unto God who works such miracles. While the most senseless governor, seeing the martyr standing at the tribunal unshaken, and having not even a hair of his head singed by the flames, called this sorcery and deceit. The great Mamas would not even make answer to the ruler. The impious tyrant then commanded that the saint be thrown to the wild beasts, they might rend him to pieces. In this end he was led to the arena. A hungry she-bear was loosed upon him. However, the bear approached the saint, bowed down before him, and lay at his feet embracing them. Then they released a leopard, but it only embraced the neck of the martyr, kissed his face, and thus wiped the sweat from off his brow. At that moment, a lion sprang into the arena and ran towards the saint, the same lion that had accompanied him from the wilderness. And the lion spoke to the Blessed Mamas with human voice. For manifesting his almighty power, God opened the mouth of the beast as once he opened the mouth of Balaam's ass. "Thou art my shepherd who tended me on the mountain." Having uttered this, the lion leapt upon the crowd. There was present a numberless multitude of both pagans and Jews, adults and children. By God's will, the gates of the arena blocked themselves, and the lion mangled a great number, so much so that even the governor barely escaped death, and only a few others were able to flee the wrath of the beast, which seized and tore all to pieces. Afterwards, the governor again laid hands on the saint and confined him once more in prison for some time. Then, for a second time, he led him out to the arena and unleashed a most ferocious lion upon him. But this lion also became meek, and lay at the feet of the Blessed One. When the people beheld this, they gnashed their teeth in their great rage at the saint, and cried out to the governor, "Lead away the lion, and we shall stone this sorcerer." Then they began to hurl stones at the martyr. One of the pagan priests, at the command of the ruler, struck the saint with a trident in such a manner that his belly was open and his intestines spilled upon the ground. The martyr gathered him up with his own hands and walked out of the city. His blood, which flowed forth like water, was collected by a certain pious woman in a vessel. Having gone about 2 furlongs from the city, he found a cave in a cliff and lay down there. Shortly thereafter he heard a voice from heaven, calling him to the heavenly dwellings of the saints, and with great joy gave up his holy soul into the hands of the Lord, for whom he had so valiantly suffered. In this manner the great Mamas received the martyr's crown. Its holy relics were buried at the place of his repose by the faithful, and many healings and miracles were wrought there, as is evident from a sermon on the saint by St. Basil the Great. Have the holy martyr in remembrance, ye that have seen him in visions, ye who live in this place and have him as your benefactor, ye who have been helped by him at the calling of his name, who being in error have been guided unto life by him, who have been healed by him, whose children have been returned to life by him though they had died, whose life has been lengthened through his intercessions. Therefore let us all come together with one body and praise the martyr. When Julian the Apostate was still a youth, he wished to leave a memorial of his piety. He began to erect a magnificent church over the grave of the holy martyr Mamas, although he did this not out of true piety, but rather out of vainglory and hypocrisy. Then a most glorious miracle was seen. Whatever was built during the day was destroyed at night. The pillars that had been erected were fallen to a heap. Some of the stones in the wall could not be made to line correctly. Other stones became so hard that they could not be hewn. Others turned into dust. The cement and the bricks were found each morning blown from their places or scattered by the wind. Indeed, this was a revealing of the impiety of Julian and a sign of his future persecution against the church, for St. Mamas did not wish that a church should be built in his honor by one who shortly afterwards raised a persecution against the true faith. St. Mamas the Martyr has always been one of the more well-known and beloved saints of the East. St. Basil the Great, St. Gregory the Theologian, and others have written panegyric homilies in his honor, he being a native of their own country. He is especially revered by shepherds and considered their patron. In Constantinople, a famous monastery was built in his honor by Pharismanes, the chamberlain of the Emperor Justinian. It was completed and enriched by Gordia, the sister of the Emperor Maurus. The monastery was located in the western part of the city, close to the gate Zagorkirku, now Belgrade Kapi. In 809, the Emperor Nicephorus I put Saint Theodore the Studite, his uncle Plato, and Joseph, metropolitan of Thessalonica, confessors for the holy icons, under house arrest in this monastery for some years. In the middle of the 10th century, St. Simeon the new theologian became its abbot, and it continued as such until 1005. There are accounts of the existence of the monastery and of its reorganization, restoration, and so forth through the period of the Latin conquest and the sack of the city by the Crusaders up to the fall of the city to the Turks in the 15th century. There was also a great shrine of St. Mamas housing some of his relics on Cyprus from ancient times. Frescoes of St. Mamas are to be found in the monasteries of Meteora and the churches of Mystra, as well as many other places. St. Mamas is depicted as a youth, holding a shepherd's crook and carrying a young fawn in his arms. Sometimes he is depicted riding a lion. An oral tradition reached the days of St. Basil the Great, that when St. Mamas would go out to milk the does, they would race one another in order to be first to reach the saint. So familiar were they with him. There is a prayer of St. Mamas, which is read when animals are sick. By the intercessions of thy great daughter Mamas, O Lord, deliver us from the teeth of the invisible foes. May glorify thee, together with the Father and the Holy Spirit, unto the ages of ages.